Every leader knows that a thriving organization depends on the energy, productivity, and commitment of its people. But few leaders are able to cultivate the employee engagement and performance needed for this level of success. What's the difference? Positive leadership practices. Welcome to the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast with your host, positive work culture expert, Alex Bratty. Ready to harness the power of positive leadership? Let's dive right in.
Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Positive Leadership Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bratty, and in this episode, we're going to talk about some coping strategies that you can use to weather the uncertainty of these ongoing pandemic times. Yes, it's important to stay positive, and certainly we have been talking about that over the last few weeks. But as coronavirus continues to affect all of us in numerous ways, we also need to be prepared for when grief and sadness or anger or frustration hits us, because it's starting to as this all drags on. Before we get into all that, though, I just want to take a moment to thank you for being here. If you enjoy this show and get value from it, please subscribe, rate, and review it. And remember, if you've got a question about positive leadership or you just want to share a story, drop me a line at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com. And if you've got a question, I will address it in a future episode. All right, so let's dive into what are becoming really somewhat darker days for us in this country right now, and you know, for a lot of countries around the world. As I speak, as I record this podcast, the impact of coronavirus is growing by the minute, the hour, and the day. Globally, as of today, which is April 2nd, 2020, globally, the total confirmed cases is nearing 1 million, and the U.S. represents 23% of those cases. Additionally, here in the U.S., just this morning, it was announced that in just the past week, 6.6 million people have filed for unemployment, and that's on top of the 3.3 million who filed the week before. And as one financial expert put it, as I was watching this on cable news this morning, these are deep recession numbers. They really are. And, you know, sadly, the worst is yet to come because we have not reached the peak of the curve according to the statistical models. And so the bottom line is, no matter what way you slice it, it is grim out there, and the nation is starting to feel it in many, many ways. So last week, in episode 25, I talked about the need to nurture our psychological health in the face of this daily onslaught of bad news. And that is all still true. We absolutely need to do that. This week, we're going to look at a slightly different angle, though. We're going to talk about what do you do when you, your family, your friends, or maybe even your colleagues start to feel stressed or sad or scared or just plain blah. I mean, people who are stuck at home right now who do not have jobs to go to are pretty blah, I can tell you. And I've seen several episodes of this recently, of these sort of frustrated feelings starting to emerge, coworkers squabbling, people fighting on social networks, others getting stuck in the doldrums of the malaise of just having to stay home. And the thing is, even if you're doing all the right things to try to stay positive, right? The things we've talked about in the last few episodes, chances are you are still going to have bad moments and bad days. And so is your team. And so are the people that you love. And so are the people that you interact with. So what can you do about that? And what can we all do, right, when we feel like this? So yes, this is intended for you as a leader and what you can cultivate in your team, but it's also intended for you personally and the people around you, whether you work with them or not, okay? This is universal, what I'm going to cover today. So 3 things I want to suggest what you can do when it feels like it's just becoming a little overwhelming or you're having those waves. I've had people describe to me how they just, Sometimes they're up and everything is fine, and then out of nowhere, they just get hit with a wave of just they can't focus, they're stressed, they're fearful, all kinds of different emotions are just flowing, and very difficult emotions that we're dealing with. So 3 things that you can do and that you can encourage the people around you to do to help with this. So first, absolutely first, realize this is normal. It is normal to have these ups and downs. It's normal to have these difficult emotions in those down periods. You are absolutely not alone, and allow yourself to feel it. Now, I know that might seem a little counterintuitive on a show that's called the Positive Leadership Movement. However, I have never said that positive leadership is all about being happy all the time, right? In fact, I talk about this a lot. If you follow me, you know this, that, as positive leaders, it doesn't mean that we're slapping smiles on faces no matter what. In fact, trying to do that right now, if you don't feel it, would be actually really unhealthy. So instead, just acknowledge what you're feeling. Sit with it. Let it be there and just breathe. Okay? And when I say breathe, and I talked about this on a prior episode, but just briefly, breathing in this sense means taking deep belly breaths, because that is actually what calms us, right? If we are breathing shallow in our chest and just sort of gasping for air and, it's all up high in our chest, we're not, and also if we're breathing through our mouth, right? It activates basically our fight or flight system. And we're sending a signal to the body that things are not okay, that they're just not, and we should be concerned, right? And so it becomes this like self-propagating spiral, if you like, that, we don't feel good, so we breathe shallow or we breathe through our mouth, and it makes it even worse and sends a signal that it is worse, right? So when I say just let the emotions be there and breathe, what I mean is breathe from your belly and breathe in and out through your nose. Okay? When you do that, when you belly breathe and you do it through your nose, and I mean the inhale and the exhale, okay? Both inhalation and exhalation through your nose. When you do that, it activates the calming system in your body. And it sends a signal saying, hey, everything is okay. Everything is going to be okay. Now, you might have emotions that are counter to that, okay? Like you might feel really stressed. You might feel really worried. But just by sitting there and acknowledging that emotion and allowing it to be there and then starting to breathe will actually let it kind of just pass through you, okay? And that is so much healthier than bottling it up, trying to pretend it's not there, trying to be positive when you really don't feel it, or you're having just, this wave of emotions that is really difficult to deal with, right? It's much better to just acknowledge it and let it pass through and do the deep breathing, okay? So that's number 1. Realize it's normal, you're not alone, and allow yourself to feel it and breathe. Number 2, and, it's interesting because as I was thinking about this podcast and what I wanted to talk about today, I was looking around to see what other people are saying about leadership right now. And interestingly, no one has mentioned this particular item that I'm going to get to next. And I think me personally, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, that's okay. We are all entitled to our opinions. But what I think is crucial right now is that we all exercise some compassion, both for yourself and for those around you. So that's self-compassion, giving yourself a break. Like if you're trying to push on through, you're trying to be productive, and it's just not happening because you are just having these emotions, then give yourself a break. It's okay, right? We are dealing with unprecedented times and really weird and unusual times, okay? It is normal, like I said, to have these waves of emotions. So have some self-compassion, but also have compassion for those around you, right? I mean, when you think about what we're all dealing with right now, it is no surprise or wonder that people are arguing. They're losing their temper. They're unable to focus right now. Why? Because everyone is frustrated, okay? We're all dealing with disappointment and worry and loss of some kind. Now, the reason for your frustration might be different than, say, those of your loved ones or your work colleagues or the essential workers who are risking their lives every day. They might be different from the reason that I'm frustrated, right? Like, we all have different reasons for being frustrated right now. But guess what? We're all frustrated and we're all dealing with our own set of issues. And so before you take that frustration out on someone in your life, pause for just a moment and walk the proverbial mile in their shoes and realize that we all need some grace and compassion right now. And we all need to extend grace and compassion to others. So if you're managing a team remotely right now, trying to work through this, or maybe your workers have been furloughed, but you're trying to stay in touch with them. I mean, you're just trying to work through this and lead the best that you can. The big thing I would say here is give people the benefit of the doubt, okay? If somebody's late with a report, if they're late to a Zoom meeting, if they don't seem to be paying attention the way they should, if they're making mistakes, tread lightly. Okay, everybody is dealing with their issues. Everybody's trying to work through them. Give people the benefit of the doubt and talk to them. Don't just ask like, why is it late? What's going on? Just say, hey, I just want to check in with you. Is everything okay? I know we're not okay, but in the scheme of things, are you okay? What can I do to support you? How can I help you right now move through this, okay? That is what we need to be saying to one another. That is what we need to be extending, not kind of just growing in our frustration and then allowing it to sort of just seep out, escape from us when something doesn't work that we expected, would go our way or would be happening, right? Because hey, this is a time of change. There's a lot of disappointment happening. There's a lot of things being canceled. It is what it is. And it doesn't mitigate your frustration. I'm not trying to do that. But what I am saying is, give people the benefit of the doubt. Have some compassion right now. Extend some grace, okay? And by the way, the definition of grace is undeserved favor. And I think that's particularly poignant right now because, maybe someone is frustrating you at work. Maybe things are not going your way, but give them some grace, give them some perhaps undeserved favor, but we all need that right now. All right. And then the third strategy I want to share with you is, and it actually helps with these first 2 points, right, of sort of allowing yourself to feel these emotions and exercising compassion. What helps with those is engaging in mindfulness. Now, mindfulness simply means being present, being aware of what's going on within you and around you moment by moment. And when we're mindful, we can realize that anger is bubbling up inside us or grief is sweeping over our body. And instead of, reacting to these emotions, right? And in some cases, a knee-jerk reaction if it's anger or resentment that's bubbling up, right? Or sort of simply feeling overwhelmed by these emotions. When we engage in mindfulness, we can calmly and accept and acknowledge these emotions. Now, there are different ways to practice mindfulness, right? You've probably heard of mindfulness meditation, which again actually takes you back to your breath, ironically enough. I was talking about that earlier. But you can also do what are called body scans, which is essentially another type of meditation, but you're basically sort of going through your anatomy part by part and just sort of checking in with it and releasing it and releasing any tension in it. And then you can also do mindful walking as well, where you are mindfully, placing your foot down, being aware of how it is moving, how your body is moving, and just appreciating like the movements your body is making. You can also mindfully eat, right? You can actually savor your food. Instead of just shoveling it in, like take a mouthful, put the fork down. Do not have it queued up for the next one. Like actually mindfully chew on your food and notice exactly the textures you're experiencing, the flavors that you're feeling, and mindfully eat. So there's lots of different ways you can practice mindfulness. And by the way, if you want to look into this more, literally just type in mindfulness into Google and you'll get a lot back, right? And there's a lot of really simple, accessible ways to get started with this if you don't do it all right now. The point is, though, that whatever way you choose to practice mindfulness, okay, every single one of them is basically associated with a reduction in stress and in emotional reactivity, meaning like, you have those knee-jerk reactions, right? Like something happens and you just like fly off the handle. Like that kind of reactivity, it starts to reduce. And all of that is exactly what we need right now. So yes, as a positive leader, are there things you can do to stay positive and encourage positivity in your team? Absolutely. Okay. And we have talked about those a lot. You can read about them on my blog at happinessatworknow.com. You can read about them on Medium, where I also write, or by listening to the last few podcast episodes that we've had here. And I still, of course, subscribe to all of that, right? Like staying positive is our best way through this. But we've got to be realistic, okay? And this is where, I think this is sometimes where positive leadership gets a bad rap, where people think it is just all smiles and rainbows and unicorns no matter what's going on. It's not. We have to be realistic. And the reality is that the ongoing weight of this pandemic is taking its toll. And so in addition to staying positive, we also need coping strategies for those days when it all just feels like too much, because we're all going to feel like that sooner or later. And so being okay with not being okay, exercising compassion, and being mindful, those 3 strategies that we talked about today, those can help with that. Okay, so I want to give you those tools to use, because I don't care how upbeat you are. I don't care how positive you are. I don't care how much you walk around smiling all day, right? Like how much it is rainbows and unicorns in your world. This stuff is gonna affect you. It just is a fact. It is just so big and so overwhelming that it's impossible to navigate our way through this, especially because it's ongoing. And not have these sort of waves of negative, I don't want to call them negative emotions because that makes them sound bad. They're not. No emotion is bad. They can be difficult emotions. Let's put it that way. And so we need those coping strategies to work through those. So I will leave you with this thought. We are all in this together. And if we can support one another, whether it's through sharing positive strategies, coping strategies, engaging in those so that we're actually getting the benefit of them and spreading that benefit around, we will all emerge better and stronger than before. That is my true belief. I really do believe. It may seem hard to think that right now, that what we're going through, we're going to emerge better and stronger than ever before, but it is absolutely my belief. And that, of course, is a sign of true resilience, which not only do so many human beings have, we certainly have it here in the US, but it exists all around the world. And resilience is also a core facet of positive leadership and positive organizational behavior, if you like, positive organizational development, let me say. So we will be resilient throughout this, and the way to do that is to use the type of strategies that I'm sharing with you here today. All right, so if you've got questions on any of this, or you just want to share what you're doing to cope with difficult emotions, drop me a line at questions@positiveleadershipmovement.com. I always love to hear from you. Also, if you want more on mindfulness, compassion, and other strategies that can help foster well-being, whether it's from, the positive side or the coping side, you can download my book for free. It has 25 different simple yet highly effective strategies that are aimed at all of this. So to get that, just go to my website, happinessatworknow.com, and you'll see right there that you can just pop your first name and your email in, and boom, you get the book for free. All right? Okay, that's it for me from me for this week. Please stay well, stay safe, and if you aren't an essential worker, please stay home. Thank you more than ever for being part of the positive leadership movement and for inspiring me to do what I do every single day.
Make sure you subscribe to the show. If you like this episode, please rate and review. If you want to get more from Alex, check out Happiness at Work, where she provides leaders with a proven path to cultivate a positive work culture that increases performance, productivity, and profitability. Go to happinessatworknow.com. Join us next week and harness the power of positive leadership for your organization.